Morning, world. Good morning to everyone watching Awesome Live. We have a very special guest. Oh, but all our guests here are awesome. But this one is somebody who has traveled through the world, who has represented our country in so many endeavors and situations. She is a citizen of the world, but of course, a very dedicated Filipina in many of her projects. And she will share with us so many of her wow moments. Let me not talk too much about introducing her because she has a very long story and many highlights in her career life. I would like you to welcome Cecile Chel Joaquin Yasay. Hi,
Uh,
Chel.
Hi, good morning, good evening to you and to everybody watching.
Yeah, I'm sure you're so used to computing timelines, diba? Wherever you are. Sometimes you're in New York, sometimes you're in Europe, sometimes, and I think it has to also do with your being quasi ambassador already. Yeah. For me, you would be in the ambassadorial level. But let's start with your story. Okay, what has Cecil Joaquin done since high school?
Wow,
Did you
long
start high
time.
school?
Yeah, if you remember, I left. My family left when I was in second year high school to go to the States because my father was assigned, was part of the diplomatic corps at the time, and we lived in New York. So that was the start of my opening up to the world. Before that, it was a very sheltered existence in St. Teresa's with the nuns. Everybody I thought was Catholic. And then all of a sudden, there's this whole new world. It was such an eye opener. And I also stayed in New York for a first year college before I went back to Manila. So that was like a good 3 years, still formative years, and it really made me um, open up to the idea that I cannot be spoon fed. My religion, my values, my concepts, whatever, everything has to be questioned. I think that's the difference in terms of education. Education in the Philippines versus education in the States. So I
Mm-hmm.
really questioned everything and then made it my own after. So
Okay.
yeah.
Give
And
me a sample of what you questioned at your young age
well,
then.
I was first year college. I was in Marymount, in New York, and I wanted to be a philosophy major because my professor was amazing. But we were taking up nihilism. We were taking up existentialism. We're taking up Nietzsche. And the first thing that my professor said when he went into the class was, "God is dead." And that for me was like so earth shaking because we were taught that we have to be good so that we can go up to heaven, and everything was about our religion, about our relationship with God. And
Mm-hmm.
when I thought about what that implication was on my life, I was so traumatized. It's like, OMG,
Mm-hmm.
everything that I valued is gone. But through that questioning, I found that, di ba kasi sinasabi na religion is opiate of the people, you just follow, it's a religion of fear. This
Yeah.
time, I found that my religion, my relationship with the Lord is a personal one. It is a relationship of love, of awe for what He has done for us. And that
Mm-hmm.
for me was the eye opener, that this time I am deeper in my spirituality and religion, not because I was taught that I would go to hell if I was not good, but because I deserved I did not deserve the love that God gave, and therefore I will continue to try and do what I can to show Him how much I appreciate it. So yon.
All right.
And then after that, went to the Philippines, went to Assumption. Shortly after, I got married, failed marriage, went back to the States. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the start again of my part two of, living in New York, and this time
Okay.
working with the United Nations.
All right.
So,
How did you get into the United Nations?
well, first, before I left for the States, I was already a manager in a big corporation in the Philippines. I was personnel manager. After also having taken my master's in industrial psychology in the Ateneo. So when I went to the States, I was determined to be independent with two little kids in tow. I had a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old. Dito, alam mo, mayaya. There, I knew I had to, take care of them by myself. But I was determined, and I knew the only way was to get into the United Nations. But
Mm-hmm.
because I did not have typing skills, I had to keep taking the typing test until I finally passed on the last day before my visa was going to expire and I was going to be sent home. So that was really like, eating humble pie. I got into the UN. Thank goodness my Mr. Rafael Salas, who I really admire a lot, was did not give me any special favors. I wanted to get in there. I had to pass the typing test. And then when I started, because I wasn't good at typing, I started as messenger level. So
Teka muna. Sino yung
yeah.
nag-type ng mga homework mo nung high school? Hala.
Hindi, to hand ano lang tayo, we were all
Ay, nung college.
handwritten. Second year high school, we never really even did our reports typed, I think, or whatever. It was mostly handwritten then.
Yeah, okay.
um but
No,
that for me
back
was,
to UN. Back to UN ah. Sorry, I just
yeah,
diverted.
yeah. So fast forward, I stayed at the UN and the United Nations and other international organizations in New York for 15 years. When I left,
Wow.
I was already officer level,
Okay.
which is difficult actually because there are so many it's parang in the military. There are so many
Ranks.
levels that you have to pass before you get
Mhm.
to. So I had to leave for a while and then to come back. But it was, I mean, it was an amazing career. Like I said, if studying in the States opened up my eyes more so in the United Nations, where I realized that I have so much in common with peoples from all parts of the world,
Mm,
that you
yes.
don't have to be from the same place.
Uh-huh.
As a matter of fact, this was said to me by someone from the New Zealand. He said, I have so much more in common with you than with people from my own country. And I understood that it's really being global, having common goals bring you together.
Okay. You were emerging into your present now that ambassadorial or global. You were becoming a global citizen that early. And your kids would have grown to what? 21 years old now by then or 15 years you said.
They decided to go home even before I did, when they
Mm.
decided to go back for college here in the
Uh-huh.
Philippines.
Uh-huh.
Which I and this is why to this day my two, although they have the option of living in the States or living here, have decided that they're going to live here because there was never that loss of the ties with the Philippines for all of us. Yeah.
Okay.
um
All right.
mm,
Okay. After that, you stayed in New York and
Well, first of all, let me just, I think if I talk about my United Nations, I really was so fortunate that I was in UNFPA,
what's
which is
that?
the United Nations Population Fund, which
Okay.
was started by our own Rafael M. Salas.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, it started as the part of the United Nations Development Program. The concept is that you cannot deal with development, which is like education, health, and all other issues of development for our people unless you also tie it up with population. We need to know the numbers in order to plan properly for the people. We also need to see the impact on the environment. Let's say also on labor, for example, how much jobs do you need to create by knowing how many people are being born? So all of that is interrelated. So the genius of having that incorporated into all development plans is very important and very critical for proper programming and planning for countries to move ahead. So this is what we did for several years. I personally was in this I was fortunate to be in this special project where we encouraged members of parliament, because as you know, in the United Nations, it usually is the Department of Foreign Affairs that
Yeah.
represent the countries there. But in development work, you really need to get the pulse of the people. And this is where you should bring in the members of parliament, our politicians, because as you know, the politicians, they're the ones that prepare the programs that are implemented by the government, and they're the ones that need to be voted by the people. So the idea there is they know the pulse of the people, they know what the people want. These are the promises that we hear, when
So
they're campaigning. So we brought them in to the
when you
dialogue.
talk when you talk about pop funds, that's not just the Philippines as the test case. When you're talking parliament, you're talking about governments
The
of
whole world.
different countries.
The
Okay, all
whole
right.
world.
Oh,
And you have here also the two parts, which is the developing countries where the programs are, and the developed countries that fund these programs. So there's got to be constant dialogue,
uh-huh.
so that you are always having to see the both sides. And so that the donor governments are able to fund the right projects. So this was where we were. And again, when you talk about a budget of government, you really are talking about the congressmen and the senators that prepare the budget. That's why it's very important for them to be a part of the dialogue. It was Mr. Salas who first brought in these members of parliament into the dialogue, into the discussion at the United Nations. So we had a lot of conferences, and I was conference officer, conference coordinator for all of those. We also had study visits from parliamentarians from one country to go to another. And so again, I was traveling almost all of the time when I was at the UN. It was about probably, I'd say, 6 months of the year that I was out
Wow.
of New York and going to all these different countries.
Hmm.
Wow, it really opened my eyes even more. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're talking of the Philippines as a receiving country, uh, being supported by, funded by another country that's funding. Was that the case?
Yes,
Okay.
but at that stage in my career, I was at the policy, international policy level, meaning in the United Nations, I did not specifically work with the Philippines per se. I
Uh,
was working with all countries and
UN.
having the dialogue, promoted
Okay.
at that level.
What?
And this was very, as I said, you need to understand where each country is in terms of its development to be able to appreciate why they have a specific position, especially when it comes to women, population,
Yeah.
and development. So
Mhm.
it was a lot, and it was at the time when gender issues were just, starting to um, be spotlighted, be highlighted, because uh, really, you cannot have the right policies if you do not listen to the half of the population,
Yeah.
which are the women. Yeah, so that was also part of like the very interesting paradigm that we were working on. The paradigm shift that was happening. No longer the men telling us what to do, but we had to be a part of the dialogue.
Okay.
So
What were the highlights of your career then? with you, Anne.
Yeah, and then the interesting part was I have like my immediate boss was a super visionary. His name is Akio Matsumura, and you can look him up and see how much he is doing and he has done. The other challenge he brought into the arena was, you talk about who are closest to um, the people, who feel the pulse of the people. The other group that should be a part of the dialogue are the religious leaders, because the religious leaders are there to influence and to know what's going on at the grassroots level. And so the first thing that I did in a new group that my boss formed was to be organizing a conference of religious leaders from the five major religions, meeting up with the political leaders, the parliamentarians,
Mm-hmm.
and coming up with the dialogue. This was our conference that was held in Oxford, England,
Mm-hmm.
in the 80s. And we had the Dalai Lama, we had Mother Teresa,
Wow.
we had the
Really?
high priest. Yes, we had the high priest of the sacred forest of Togo. We had some American Indians at the same time dialoguing with the Grand Mufti of Syria from the Muslim side, from Islam. And then we also had the Mufti, I'm sorry, the leaders of the Hindu religion. So all of them coming together in Oxford, England, with parliamentary leaders. At then, as part of our group was Al Gore. He
Uh-huh.
was senator then, yeah, and then some others. From Senator Shahani was the one who was chosen to represent Asia, and coming from the Philippines.
Mm-hmm.
So when we had this conference, we did not have an agenda. The conference was um, to ask a question: how can we uh, solve the biggest problems of the world? What are the biggest problems of the world? How can we work together to solve them? And so it became like a blueprint. And of course, one of the first things that came out was the environment issue.
Mm-hmm.
So in that
Okay.
conference, yeah, of course, because we had our resource persons, our scientists were Carl Sagan, James Lovelock, and really just
Wow.
hearing all of them come together in a very informal atmosphere. No, I am more important than you
Uh-huh. Yeah.
environment, but just really coming together in Oxford, England, where we had them stay in student dorms, it was like really an amazing um, dynamic that happened there.
Did you get to
And
talk to Mother Teresa?
yes, she
Really?
had such a holy face, and I remember, how she immediately visited um, the poor areas of London
Zonta.
to be able to feel, yeah, what was going on there. Dalai Lama also was, for
Yeah.
me, amazing. His message was very clear. He said, Mother Earth is talking to all of us, and Mother Earth is saying, my children, what are you doing to me? Which is like really, it's such a visual thing that, really, we're all here. We cannot, just destroy one part and think that we can continue to live here in this earth.
Yeah.
We're given one earth. And so
Yeah.
it was such, yeah, and so many things happened after that.
Mhm.
Our next one was, the challenge was, at that time, President Gorbachev was also part of our group,
Russia.
Russia. So he
Uh-huh.
invited us to have the next conference in Russia at the time when he was promoting perestroika, which is opening up Russia.
Yeah.
And the interesting part there was that we
Mm.
were going to bring in the religious leaders. As you know, Russia did away with all the religions.
Yeah.
So we didn't even know who the counterpart was in terms of organizing the event. So President Gorbachev assigned Dr. Velikov, who is head of the science um, science part of the Russian government. And it was, I mean, it was such, again, an amazing experience to have, you know, someone chanting and praying, you know, five religions praying in the Kremlin when we were having a meeting there. We also had some some religious leaders from, you know, the Jewish faith. And
Mm-hmm.
because it was Friday and they had to do their prayer, they stayed in one corner of the Kremlin to do their prayers. I mean, really, just imagine that all these things were happening there. And
Yeah.
I think, you know, this is sadly, when I look back, because my boss was such a visionary, he wanted to really have, you know, different countries understand each other more. When you understand each other more, you find ways to connect. And then also, his concept, Akio's concept, is if you have these informal bridges of communication,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to go the official way, which sometimes is blocked by, you know, historical and other concerns. But
Yeah.
if you have, let's say, you know, two heads of state that trust each other,
Mm-hmm.
that can come together and say, okay, this is my concern, this is your concern, how can we do a win-win situation?
Uh-huh.
That was what I was hoping would happen in the world. So, but
No.
not so, not so. Yeah.
Well, we can still see it's not happening now, but there's always hope. The young are you can be one of those who can inspire the young to do their thing. But
I
after that,
think,
what happened? Oh,
yeah. Well, first of all, really, you're right about that. That each one of us, I mean, I don't consider myself an ambassador of anything, but I consider myself like if you have the right values, the values, I mean, if I can do a little bit just, you know, of mentioning, let's say, for the elections in the Philippines, if you can understand the position of each person and hear what actually they're saying without any personal biases initially, then I think you will make the better choice. You know, of course, I'm being very, you know, optimistic here, but this is what I'm saying. This is the formula. If you can just have an open mind and understand and hear what the concerns are of each person, then
mm-hmm.
you will come, you know, to a better place of compassion, of kindness, of understanding.
All right. So you brought all these values with you when after you said you went back to the Philippines and you were assigned to a government position.
Right, right.
Oh.
So by this time, this was already in the 90s, 1990, um, I got married again. And then he decided that we were going back to the Philippines. It was payback time. We were going to serve in the government. So he served as chair of the Securities and Exchange Commission, and I served as executive director of the Population Commission.
Okay,
So
stop
this
there
is
first.
Junyasay. Yeah.
How did you meet? Siyempre, we have to put a little romance in the ano. How did you meet?
Uh, well, we met in the Philippines, but many years
Ah,
later, yeah, many years later, in hot pursuit. But my priority then was my children, and
uh-huh.
by this time, my children were already, you know, they accepted, they were supportive of a second relationship, and so that's what happened. But I remember. It was something that you, Nancy, said to me, that when you get married again, you should be able, there should only be one master in the relationship, or one person that will make the decisions, of course, in consultation.
Oh, sino
And
yun?
syempre yung lalaki. Well, hindi naman syempre, but, and so that was my examination of conscience. When he asked me to get married, am I willing to give up my career in the United Nations in case he asks me to go back to Manila.
Wow.
Because by that time, he was already staying in Manila. And
Yeah.
when I could say yes to that, then I said yes to the marriage.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
that was it. And not only that, because after I was in the Philippines and I was with the Population Commission in a new marriage, I got pregnant. And the president then was Mr. President
Ramos.
Ramos. And
Ramos.
President Ramos would invite me to make the presentations to the cabinet on the population and development program. And then he would always say, "Why is my executive director of Popcom always pregnant?" And I had to tell him, I said, "Mr. President, this is exactly the point that we want children, or we have children that are wanted, that we have prepared for, not, just random and we're not ready." So yeah, so
Before anything, have to give a name to the other party who got you pregnant.
his name was Perfecto Yasay.
Okay,
And
yeah.
as I said, he was the chairman of the SEC during President Ramos' time also.
Okay. All right. Forward to Popcom.
Wow.
So you
Again,
got
another,
pregnant. You got pregnant while in the population commission.
yes, twice. But again, this is another, eye opener, because most of my career by then, it was like 15 to 20 years in New York. And now I'm going back to the Philippines. 78, yeah. So I was like not used to working, especially in government, but I loved my work at Popcom, because what I saw as international policies that we had promoted at the international level, I was now going to see implemented in our country and even in the communities. And that for me was such a, I was so energized, and I was so ready to bring in my contacts, my connections, my experiences back to the Philippines, my
Mhm.
country. And what was so useful then was, we had organized the International Conference on Population and Development around this time. Again, which is UN led, UN, with all the countries of the world. This time, I was going to participate in the UN conference on population and development as the uh, representative
Spokesperson.
from the Philippines. Yeah.
Okay,
So,
great.
mm.
Okay. All right. So how was your career there in Popcom? Is it
Well,
still
first,
existing? Is this commission still existing?
very alive and very active and happily producing a lot of results. Let me
Really?
tell you,
Who's in charge now?
the executive director is now also undersecretary level. GP, haya na ako, nagsisenior moment na ako,
Okay,
nakakahiya.
mamaya na lang. All right.
Um, anyway,
Basta GP.
and he was with the Department of Health. He was an undersecretary then, and really he knows the program very well.
Okay.
Um, and he was, so the Popcom, when I joined, was uh, our board was composed of the secretaries of education, of health, of labor, of really all different secretaries.
Yeah.
And of course, the my main boss was the head of NEDA, Economic and Planning and Development Planning Secretary. So it was Shell Habito at that time.
Yeah.
And it was such an you know uh it was the best setup, I think, because we would have the regular meetings with the NEDA group, which included, briefing on socioeconomic development, on planning, targeting, etc., and then seeing what was happening. Especially, you want to know the poverty level, you want to know how many pregnancies, how many women are dying because they're not getting the proper, family planning uh, needs before, even getting pregnant. So all these things, and then the development of the youth. So how many children are dying even before they get to 7 years old. So all of these you get to see, which help identify where the programs and the challenges are in the
Yeah.
program.
Chel, what's the average age of women Filipinas now who are giving birth?
Oh, I'm not familiar with the statistic anymore,
Mhm.
but before, we were targeting, we've always targeted for, when you talk about pregnancy, too young, because age of menarche, when you get your period and when you can get pregnant, you can
Oo.
start so early,
Yeah.
but then even if you can get pregnant at 11 or 12, it doesn't mean you're ready. So we really want
Oh,
to address that, too young, too soon, which is it takes our body at least 2 years to recover from a pregnancy. So
yeah.
that's another area that we have to look at. And then also too old, um, and too many. So
Yeah.
those are the things that we were looking at, and the program was. Let me just tell you something about, if we talk about family planning, which has always been a controversial program in the Philippines. The government is to provide services, goods and services that for the entire population. In sadly, in the family planning program, that's why we have to be pro poor, because when we can afford it, we will go to our doctor, and our doctor will prescribe all kinds of like family planning services that they can give us. But this is not something that um, those who cannot afford will be able to get. So this is what the government gap has to address. That we will be there to listen to what people want and be sure that there is a program for that. And if you look at, connect that, let's say, with abortion,
Yeah.
um, abortion in the Philippines is not from because of the single, uh, you know, um, who were not ready to get
Yung
pregnant, but it is
disgrasya.
the women, yung mga not that, it was the women that had too many in the more, in the depressed areas that don't want any more children. So that was what the program was trying to address, and continues to address to this day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Since you
So
mentioned the A word, how do you parry now the controversies that are around that, and yet try to focus on the program itself?
we have a very unique constitution. I think we're one of the few in the world that has a provision for protection of the unborn. And because of that, abortion can never be legalized in this
Okay.
country, except, of course, for certain, I don't know, for health purposes or whatever. But as like the way it is in, let's say, in the United States, where they allow abortion up to
Yeah.
6 weeks or whatever, term in the pregnancy, that will never happen in the Philippines. And I think this is something that should be appreciated by all. We are God fearing, children loving, family, unity,
Yeah.
values. This is what the Filipino is all about. And we are never going to be, to have anything that will go against that. And let's not, do that uh, to an extreme that we really are hurting the poor
Okay.
because we are not giving them the program that they need. So that for me was like the painful part there. But again, I'm so glad our NGOs are alive, our non-governmental organizations, especially our women's organizations that are always there to provide whatever the government is not allowed to do because of certain lobbies and pressures. You have the NGO community,
Okay.
that's also there.
Okay.
So
Chapter 3 of your
chapter
career.
3. Okay, so after two pregnancies, actually my first one resulted in a miscarriage because at that time I wasn't supposed to be flying. But if you have 15 regional offices that you have to visit all over the country, it's not possible not to travel. So against doctor's orders, I traveled and I lost my first baby. So come second one, I made all the promises to God. This time I'm going to be good. And
Okay.
we were so blessed to have our baby girl,
Uh-huh.
Stephanie, who by the way is now 26 years old. Anyway, so she was my popcom baby. That's what my popcom uh,
Yeah.
family calls her. But Stephanie made me realize what the most important role of a woman is to be a mother. So
Mm-hmm.
by the time she was born, I decided I was going to quit my official job and concentrate on her,
Raising her.
on raising her.
Okay.
Um, yeah. So, and it was also during this time when my husband was involved with the it was ano ba, People Power 2, the impeachment proceedings of President Erap, and in the Steph was around 3 years old. He said to us, "Go and leave because I'm going to fight this to the end, and I don't want you guys to be involved." So uh, we moved to Hawaii. We've always had a place in Hawaii when we were still in New York.
Mm-hmm.
We had a vacation rental place there. So it was very easy for us to move back there. And Stephanie started school there. And I found a new career. At that time, it was I was so into interior design. So
Mm-hmm.
I worked as staging, um, homes for a good friend, Dol Panlilio
Ah,
Bediones, who
hi, Dol.
always, yeah, always one of the top realtors. And I really just wanted to help her. And she says, "Wow, you have a magic wand. When you fix that, whatever she's selling, it sells faster." So I was so happy and doing that. My second part of the other things I did in Hawaii in the long, because I raised my daughter there, was we also started a school. It's called New Oli Medical School, which was really training nurses
Oh,
and
good.
caregivers. Yeah, that was also very rewarding. I opened that with several doctor friends,
Mm-hmm.
and but then shortly after I left, so natapos na yun. But anyway, and also during that time I had the opportunity to work with a Filipina in the Hawaii legislature, Senator Donna Mercado Kim. She again is like, I mean, if you want to work with someone and learn how things are done, this is her.
Okay.
Senator Kim has had all kinds of experiences at the city council level, congresswoman. She even became Senate president. So when I joined her, she was Senate president. And I also had such wonderful experiences meeting the Filipinos in Hawaii. You just have to be so proud of Filipinos in Hawaii.
That's good.
Um, as you
Maybe.
know, they came as farm workers, but
Yeah.
now the second, third generations, there's a lot of professionals,
Uh-huh.
doctors,
Yeah.
lawyers, business people, and they're really making a mark in society.
All right.
Of course, the example is Senator Dana.
Okay.
Her roots are from Batangas, um, and but you really look up to people who have made it, through the ladder, going up and then appreciating what they can do
Okay.
for
You just mentioned people appreciating people for their leadership, and also we might as well start with your photos because wait. You had so many to share, and I was just viewing the photos that you had, and they're all wow, fantastic. Hold on, let me just put them on slides. Okay, share the slides of Jen. Wait, what's happening? Sorry. Okay.
Sige.
Wait, where the share
Okay.
the
So
slide?
while you're ano, can I just add one little more
Yes,
thing
please. Yes, please.
about Hawaii and the Filipinos there. Do you
Okay.
know our Philippine Center in Hawaii, the Filipino Community Center, beautiful building and lots of activities, is the only one in the world where it was raised by
Oh, sorry.
monies from Filipinos. This was headed by Eddie Flores and Roland Casamina, two businessmen who, just spearheaded this project. And again, that's something to be very proud of. Okay,
Okay.
so
All
this
right.
picture is with Jill Biden, who is now the first lady. Uh,
Oh,
yes.
yeah. This is
So
the she's the first lady or the actual first lady?
she's the actual first
She's
lady.
the,
She's
all
married
right.
to President Joe Biden.
Uh-huh.
And we were with her in the United Nations. That's Stephanie with me. And her advocacy then, working with the Secretary General's wife, was education,
Okay.
especially education of girls.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. All right.
Yeah.
So this was kind of recent when
This,
Biden became president.
yeah, no, this was not, she wasn't a first lady then. She
I
was,
see. Okay.
yeah, this was at the United Nations in
Yeah.
2016
Okay.
when my husband addressed the General Assembly of the United Nations.
All right. Okay. Next slide. We have
Ah,
wow.
okay.
Okay.
Okay. President Obama, interesting story was that, June was trying to very hard to get the two presidents, President Duterte and President Obama, to talk to each other, even informally. But then, and it was supposed to happen on the side in the APEC meeting, I think it was. But then in the press con, President Duterte had said something that reached President Obama,
Yeah.
um, and so the meeting never happened. So when this photo uh, op came about, um, President Obama said to June, "You have a hard job," and June said to President Obama, "You could have made it easier." So it was a cute exchange, but
Mhm.
yeah.
Okay. But this was at the White House or in the Philippines?
No, no, no. Again, this was in the United Nations.
Ah, sorry.
Yeah, so they were meeting different delegations, and we had the opportunity to meet with them too.
Yeah. Well, just as a side comment, so you were probably in fashion, in a Filipiniana fashion, I guess, huh?
Yes, yes. And
Uh-huh.
another interesting story here is, like I was saying, can we have like a stool so we can be as tall as you are? Because look, it looked like, it's not from the same picture. Like our perspective is different from theirs. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, cute naman kayo. Okay. Next.
Thanks.
Okay.
Okay.
Lastly,
These are my population and development partners. I
uh-huh.
was so fortunate to have as our leader then President Ramos, who was so supportive of the program, and
Uh-huh.
with us there is Dr. Carmencita Riodica. She was Secretary of Health at that time. So
Uh-huh.
we were able to move the program along very well because of our good relationship.
Hindi ka nabuntis dito, ah.
Hindi na, tapos na yan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, all right.
Okay. Again, this is a perk of really, delivering a message to the Pope So when we went to the Vatican, we had the special audience with the Pope
Sinong
because he
Pope?
was there.
Francis.
This is Pope Francis, yeah.
Okay.
And you see, I'm holding a rosary. My sister Tina had cancer, and I promised her that I would have a rosary blessed for her by the Pope. And that
Uh-huh.
was what I was holding. Yeah,
Okay.
which I gave to Tina.
All right. Okay.
Okay, a woman that I very much admire, Aung Aung
Oh,
Aung San
uh,
Suu Kyi.
yeah.
Yeah. So
Okay. Where did you
you
meet?
really this was one of our there were a lot of meetings with them in Asia,
Uh-huh.
and she was always, I mean, most of the heads of state in Asia were men, but she was able to hold her ground, and she was a very good addition
Was she
to.
soft spoken? Soft spoken because she looks so delicate.
No, she's very I wouldn't call her soft spoken, but I she's very intelligent, and you can see it when she speaks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Speaks with authority. Yeah.
Okay. And again, yung suot mo was ano,
Oo nga
fashionista
eh.
Filipiniana. Okay.
Yeah.
That's nice. Ah, eto na.
Well, I guess there's a lot of that.
Yeah.
We like to well, we spent a lot of I was just looking at my pictures when I was collecting for this. We really traveled a lot ever since when we were still in New York, and then throughout our life we always enjoy traveling with the children, and because we have a blended family. He has two
Mm-hmm.
kids, I have two kids, and then we have one together. But
Yeah.
it's so seamless that I feel that his kids are my kids, he feels that my kids are his kids, and it's just a beautiful seamless arrangement.
And that's a blessing.
Yeah. Okay, so that's our little Stephanie. Um,
Ah, wow.
yeah,
Okay. Where was this? Where was this? Where did you get married? In New York or in the Philippines?
we got married 3 times because he said, I will make sure that you cannot undo the marriage. So we got married in New York, and then we got married twice in the Philippines. So there
Wow.
was a ceremony, and then of course there was the papers.
Ah,
Um,
okay.
yeah. So more pictures of
Neat.
the family.
Uh-huh.
My two boys are there. The two
There and
boys,
here, yeah.
Richie and Nino.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then my sisters were always
Nina,
very close. Yeah, Tina, Charo, Tina,
Charo.
and Lindy beside me. And then my two daughters-in-law,
Uh,
Rowena, Unson, and Anavi
what
Borlongan.
year was this? What year was this?
I would say that this probably around mm, 8 years ago.
Okay. Kasi, Jappy, Mr. Yasay was still, um,
Yeah.
hale and healthy and all.
And Tina also. We
Tina, yeah.
lost both of them, yeah,
Yeah.
around the pandemic time.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. This is very, very important photo because in January of 2020, just before the pandemic started, our son-in-law, he's the one in the corner, uh,
Him.
standing in the back,
Okay.
um, proposed marriage to our daughter Stephanie.
Uh-huh.
And Stephanie didn't know, so we were all in Tally Beach with the whole family, and he proposed to her. And June at that time, as you know, he passed away in June 2020. So in January, he said to Steph and Gabe, can you please have the wedding soon? We didn't realize that he was already feeling something then, that his cancer was probably coming back. So this was one beautiful family get together. And on the way back from Tali, uh, the Taal volcano was erupting. So
Yeah. Ominous. It was ominous. Okay.
yeah. Okay.
Conference.
So when I was yeah,
Parliament.
so this was already as part of my work with in Popcom.
Uh-huh.
We had a lot of conference on population, status of women. I would usually come like representing the Philippines, but I would also be delivering a paper.
Oh,
Um, yeah. So one of the uh, papers that was very important was when we did a study, and it was published. It was like the role of the the elderly in the Philippines. This became because like different from the states. In the states, if you want to address the problems of the elderly, you give support to the institutions that will uh, house them, that will
yeah.
take care of them. You know, in the Philippines, we saw that our population is aging faster, um, and at the same time, we do not have like senior homes or assisted living. We give them, it's the families that take over care of them, the children, the grandchildren, even other relatives. So as a policy, we need to give the whatever services and whatever
Support. For
we
a
need to
while.
give the
Okay.
services to the people themselves. So
All
that's
right.
why that became, I guess, a basis of our the senior citizen law.
Yeah, that's good. That's very good. I'm moving to the next one. Are you still with me?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. Wow. This must be in Russia. Is this Russia or London?
No, this is Mr. Salas is right there in front, and this is the
Ah,
UN.
okay.
These are all ours, the staff of the UN Population Fund when I
No,
was
where are
there.
you? Where are you?
They're a small in the fourth row or something.
Okay. Yeah. I'm
I'm saying
there's an audio. Okay.
everyone is like from different countries, and they
Uh-huh.
became best friends. So
Mm,
it's nice. Yeah, this was in New York.
all right. Very nice. Very dramatic.
Mm.
What's this?
That's the Oxford Conference. That's
Uh-huh.
the conference that was held in Oxford, England.
With all the
And if
religious leaders. Wow.
with all the
Chell.
hello, yeah, if you notice the globe as seen from outer space, that is
Uh-huh.
like what was central in the conference, because it's the what we should all be thinking of. We're all together in that one globe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, also participating in that conference, in addition to the scientists, the political leaders, the religious leaders, were artists.
Ah,
Um,
yeah.
they
Chell.
hello,
Yeah.
I
What's happening to your phone or laptop?
uh-oh, uh-oh, I lost you.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know how to go back. Hala. There.
But you're
There.
still on. Okay. All right. You're
Okay.
still on.
So that there
So
were
you said artists.
the
Artists.
artists. So in preparation for this, we had another conference also in Robert Redford's ranch in Sundance,
Mm-hmm.
where the artists talk about how they can contribute to making people realize why what problems we have and why we should work together. So from the Philippines, we invited Jim Paredes,
Uh-huh.
who even came up with a song that we used in the conference. It's I remember it's something like a piece of the piece. Each of us is holding a piece of our piece. the world
Okay.
peace.
All
So it
right.
was really, yeah.
All right. Buti hindi ka na sa starstruck. Next slide. All right.
This is an example of what I was doing. I was working with the Russian uh, uh,
Delegation.
secretariat. No, the secretariat
Oh,
um,
I see.
to
Okay.
organize conference. Yeah, so these are the head of the secretariat, my counterpart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a wonder how you manage with some language barriers in between, huh?
Oh yes, there were some of them that did not speak English well, but there
Yeah.
are ways to communicate, and a smile helps a lot.
Oh, yeah. That's nice.
Yeah,
That's nice to know. Okay.
yeah.
All right.
Okay, Nick Joaquin.
Yes,
Um,
idol, idol. Okay.
yeah,
I wasn't going to let you go without this. All right.
I know that's why. So, Tito Nick, this was I think
Wait,
this one.
Chel. Tell the people first how you are related, how that Joaquin is in your family name.
Okay, my Tito Nick Joaquin is a brother of my dad, Ike Joaquin. Tito Nick, we call him Tito Onching, um, never got married. So we were all his children. We spent a lot of time with him, and I mean, he's such a character. We loved him
Yeah.
dear. Yeah, so very boisterous. He loved to bring us to the movie theater and then would love to scare us. But, the quiet theater would hear his like boo, and I mean it was fun. Um so this was his 100th death anniversary. That there was a tribute to him and we all went. And it was, I think, the NCCA that organized this
Did
National
you
Committee.
not did you not get intimidated about your writing talents since you have an uncle who's a national artist?
When we were small, we would always tell, like, when, of course, our parents would push us to study hard and to do in school. And we would always say, but how come Tito Nick, he dropped out? And then, mom and dad would always say, why? Do you have his, genius, his talent? And so that, immediately put us back in our place. And, if you don't, then you better study harder. Um, but Tito Onching also, like when I was growing up and we would be studying about him and I would tell him, Tito, we're studying your book. And he would always say, darling, do you even understand? Don't bother. He's so bad. So, yeah, I mean, nobody
You're
tries
so
to be.
lucky, yeah,
Yeah.
to have had him. Well, okay, next slide. Who is
Okay.
this?
These are my
Shahani?
mentors. Yes, these are my mentors, the ones I worked with.
Uh-huh.
Actually, we set up the Philippine parliamentarians, PLCPD, Philippine Legislators Committee on Population and Development. They were our two chairs, our
Mm,
co-chairs, Senator Shahani and Congresswoman Tessie Aquino Oreta. They
ah,
are two women who have done a lot
mhm.
in terms of, promoting population status of women, all of that. As you know, Senator Tahani was one of those who held like a very high position in organizing the highest position when in organizing the UN conference on women. The picture with Tessie Aquino Oreta is, if you see that, that's Che Guevara in the background.
Uh-huh.
This was taken when we had a study visit to Cuba. Um, and this was when I was with the POPCOM. This was a study visit to Cuba to learn about
Yeah.
their family planning and health programs. Cuba proudly claims to have better mortality rates and morbidity rates than even the developed countries, meaning they have such a good health and successful health program. And so we wanted to see what they were doing. One, they were manufacturing their own vaccines. Two,
Mm-hmm.
they had set up that in every community there was a doctor and a nurse that took care of that community. So there was that like close proximity to, they knew what was happening, you know,
Mm-hmm. Okay.
each house. Yeah.
All
So
right.
I such a great admiration for Fidel Castro when we went there because precisely of this health program. And we almost thought we weren't going to meet him because, you know, we were going to leave the next day. But he called us. We had a meeting with him, and he knew everything about our, he said, the parallel of our history. You know, Cuba
Mm-hmm.
and the Philippines, was there. And then he asked Tessie about um, Senator Ninoy, and he asked me about June.
Uh-huh.
So he studied all of our backgrounds, and
Mm-hmm.
I, that's when he decided, okay, I should talk to these people. So
Well, those are the photos that we have, but we're nearing the end. Although I cannot let you go unless I know what's your bucket list after having met parliaments and presidents and Al Gore. Were you starstruck?
actually, I never was, I guess, because I was too busy. And
Yeah, working. Uh-huh.
yeah, well, the first time I was starstruck and I really had such a big crush was on when I was still at the UN, early days, when I met Rajiv Gandhi. Rajiv Gandhi
Hmm.
was the Prime Minister of India. He was the one that
Oh,
was,
okay. Sorry.
and Rajiv, you know, I was just handing some documents to him. He looked at me and just gave that special thank you. And I was like, okay, I can't, you know, for me, that was when I was like, you know, I realized no matter how high they are, they will always have that kindness, that sensitivity. And I think these are the leaders that I look up to, that
No,
they never lose that sense of humanity, of,
yeah.
you know, making everyone feel special. So that for me was being starstruck. But you know, when I look back, I really have been so blessed in having all these like mentors and opportunities and experiences, that I, uh, in general, look at everything as a total experience. And it just brings me back to where I am right now, which is, seriously, we are such a little dot in the history of mankind. We are such a little nothing in the global perspective. And we cannot ever be, you know, feeling that we are more important or more special than anyone. For me, it goes back to really just being able to show kindness and appreciation to everyone that you meet, because that is really for me the message of my life, that
Mhm.
very important people treated me with so much respect, and
Humility.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
and I should do the same thing to everyone
Yep.
else,
Okay.
because at the end of the day, it's really our humanity that links all of us, you know.
Mhm.
So
Are you retired?
are we ever retired? You
Good
can.
question. Yeah. Good answer. Good answer. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
uh,
again, go back to there are two things that usually happen in interviews like this of often awesome people like you. One, we always encourage them write your book because your story is awesome. So maybe I don't know if that's in your agenda. Secondly, we ask you to finish up the interview with an inspiring message to the Gen X who really are going to be the movers and the shakers, or they are actually are the ones. But before that, I would like to tell you that I noted down too young, too soon, too old, too many, and I think that's a message that we have to really stress in, as you said, in the global perspective. Not maybe not even the global, but in the Philippine perspective, and putting in the trust and kindness to that to this manifestation of too young, too soon, too old, too many. I really don't know how to grasp that, but it's there. right? So we
Mhm.
have to probably, you have to shake and inspire the now generation into facing this.
You know, when you look at whatever problem we have, be it a problem of like our population, situation, environment, our, the possibility of wars happening right now, all of these, it boils down to one thing. It really is about all of us and how we can have a change of heart. It's, really our heart is what we should guard against, because all our actions, everything we say, comes from the purity of our intentions, which comes from the heart. And so for me, this is the daily we should all, intention is so important. I share a little bit of my Bible study.
Thank you.
Uh, Okay. One of the things, like really, because everything should not be about form, but it has to be about substance. For example, when we go to mass, yes, because it's an obligation, otherwise it's a sin. But then we go there and we think about all the things that we're going to do after mass. I am going to eat this, I'm going to do this, and ganyan, ganyan. Ay, malapit na. So you are not really at mass. You may be there physically, but you're not there. So this is what I mean by the substance. In everything that we do, we have to make sure that we have purity of intentions. Recently, we had recollection talking about, how do we correct a person that is doing something wrong? Is that our duty? And of course, in the Bible, it says, yes, we have to correct. And if that person is not convinced, then we get somebody else to correct. But also, there is always that example of Jesus Christ. He never condemned, he never pointed the finger, he never stared, he never put down anybody, but it was always with compassion that he said, I am not, condemning you, but I hope you will change. And
Yeah.
I think the message that we have for each one, especially at this time when there are so many difficult issues that we have to contend with in terms of politics, in terms of values related to even same-sex marriage or whatever. I don't know, I mean, lots of things. At the end of the day, it is our own reckoning with our relationship with God and being sincere, being real, that will give us the answer on how we should look at it.
Okay.
um Yeah, so no judging, walang judgmental,
Okay.
but compassion and kindness.
Yeah.
That is for the message, and then we will have a more improved world with that. Yeah.
I think you've gone full circle already from your career to, and then now a spirituality. But please first say hello to Carla Arguelles, who said, great interview, Chelsea.
Thank you, Carla.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
part of the Bible study group. Yeah.
Yeah. So we end with this very awesome woman and her story and all the wow moments that she had. And yet she would end with a message on compassion, not, and I think she has stayed grounded despite meeting Mother Teresa and Al Gore and even Robert Redford. And, we take example with Chell, and I know that she'll continue to accomplish more things and be an inspiration not just to her children, grandchildren, to even the co-seniors that are still around, that are around you. So thank you very much, Chel, Cecile, Joaquin, Yasay, for this very inspiring interview. And we are proud of you. God bless you.
Thank you, Nancy. Next time we will interview you because you also have a life. Thank you.
Maraming secret. Love you. Thank you,
Thank
audience, for sticking it out, even with the extension, because it was a very, very interesting interview. God is good. Good night.
thank you.